who do we want to open with the intros? Because I think we need to have somebody who sort of says, okay, we're going to blah, 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 and then needs to sort of...
Holmes, you are literally an actor.
Oh, okay. I will do it.
You are the best person to do this.
I don't know. Holmes doesn't exactly seem like a performer to me.
Oh, does he not? Oh, good. Oh, what a shame. Welcome back to Speaking from Ignorance. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. All of us have returned, plus a new addition, Mr. Sammy Colburn. I'm back. I'm Henry Holmes, actor, polemicist, raconteur, and all-round idiot. Please, who's next?
Hi guys, I'm Sid. I am a PhD student in astronomy.
Hey, what's up? It's me, Daniel. I'm also a PhD student in astronomy.
Hi guys, my name is Jacque. I am a charity doer. I am a social mobility advocate and I like tea.
Well, I'm Sammy Colburn. I'm doing a PhD in high-energy particle physics at University of Birmingham in return. And I'm the only one who has had to spend more than 2 years with Holmes. So,
So guys, how was everyone's week?
I mean, thousands of people are still dying every day. So that's
Yeah,
bad.
but how was your week? You haven't died.
No, I haven't died, which is good.
Another update from last week. Turns out Kim Jong-un is fine.
Whoa. Hang on. He's not fine. He's still a terrible human being, but he is healthy.
And he has not had surgery.
Oh, did he not?
No, I saw the news today, and South Korea has said that the rumors with him recovering from heart surgery or whatever it was not true, allegedly.
Our glorious leader is in perfect health, as always.
You see, Holmes, when other people make the joke, it's obvious it's a joke. When you make the joke, it's kind of like 50-50.
That's the reason I make those jokes. It's just so edgy, you know? I'm like the Knights of Ren. I'm just really edgy, and I don't really serve a purpose. Have any of you, just to bring up, because I found myself taking part in a Disney pub quiz yesterday, and I was thinking about pub quizzes in general, because I used to host one, and I'm going back to doing that on Saturdays now for my drama school.
Oh, it's in online, right?
Yeah, online. Yeah, I'm not going around going, oh, how's your coronavirus? Ooh. They're all scattered across the country now. Anyway, it'd be quite difficult to do it physically. It got me thinking, and I have dug out some of my old pub quiz questions to bedevil you with on this week's podcast.
Are these questions that you've written, or are these?
These are questions that I've researched and written for my pub quiz, which I used to do at the Gorringe Park.
Other pubs are available.
I'm going to go for food and drink, the subject you'll probably all know the least about.
No. I actually have I eat and drink every day.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay. What was the question one on this round was, which small Russian buckwheat pancakes are traditionally served with soured cream? Put your hands up and I'll accept your terrible incorrect answers one at a time.
If any listeners know the answer, please tell us.
Russian pancakes.
Sammy, I can see you looking it up.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Is it Bellini?
It's a blini. Yes, it's a blini.
Yes! Oh,
wow,
I remember that.
What staggering intellect.
That Google has.
Daniel, when you edit this together, make me look really smart. Just make it look like I got it instantly.
Yeah, I'll put it so you speak over Holmes before he's even finished.
I'll ask you the question 5 from that round. I'm just doing a random smattering. There's no point in me asking you all 60 questions from the quiz. So, question 5 from the same round. A nectarine is a smooth-skinned variety of which fruit?
Orange.
I thought it was orange as well, Daniel, but
Grapefruit.
I did the research,
Grapefruit.
and it's peach. It's peach.
It's peach, of course. Yeah, no, I don't... Daniel, cancel the nectarine. We didn't say orange, we said peach the whole time.
To change the subject completely, again, the thing I want to talk about before that I actually wanted to talk about here is apparently invasive giant hornets have been spotted in the US for the first time. You know those like huge Japanese killer hornets? They're now an invasive species in the US.
Well,
so
that's
fun.
just 2020, isn't it? Like, how can we make things worse?
Beekeepers have reported piles of dead bees with their heads ripped off, an alarming sight in a country with a rapidly declining bee population.
Yeah, that is quite an alarming sight, to be honest.
They're more than 2 inches long? Oh, God.
Yeah, no, they're huge.
Honestly, you probably want to crossbreed your native bees with Japanese wrestling bees then, because they're adapted to deal with those hornets.
Holmes, that was an anime you read. No, I know. They pile on the hornets and then kill them by using their own body heat. It's pretty hardcore.
Let's move on to the main section of the podcast. Who wants to introduce the topic?
Sammy, because he asked the question.
Why are there more houses than homeless people in the UK?
Yeah. On The Guardian in 2018 in November, they said at least 320,000 people are homeless in Britain. I hope that means the UK when they use Britain in that sense.
I think it will exclude Northern Ireland.
Because technically, Britain is just Scotland, Wales, and England.
Okay, the reason these stats are much lower is because it's not counting homelessness as in people who don't own or rent accommodation. It's counting rough sleepers. So it's not counting people who are being put up in hostels or B&Bs or in various forms of help by the council.
So moving forward, should we say that all of these people are homeless, or do we want to focus more on just rough sleepers?
It's two separate issues. But the point is, okay, if you focus just on rough sleepers to begin with, and then later you talk about the bigger problem, but they are related.
Yes, they're related. It's interesting, actually, the number of rough sleepers has gone down massively. So it's kept going up for London, but for the rest of England, from 2017, it's been going down.
Oh, really?
Which could point to more effective measures, or it could point to the fact that they're migrating to London, which historically has happened before. There's a subject when you go to school in Scotland called Modern Studies, which is basically a mishmash of history, politics, economics, and various other things. But it's very recent history. And I remember studying The Big Issue as sort of a case study. And it said when The Big Issue first was launched, because it was only launched in London, it caused a mass exodus of homeless people from Scotland, from Edinburgh, Glasgow, and from the northern parts of England, all to London, which skews the statistics somewhat. Because, if you're just counting your numbers of homeless and rough sleepers, you're going, well, look at us, we're amazing because we don't have this issue. Well, you're going, no, they've just travelled, actually. You've not solved the problem, you've shifted it.
Do you think there's any reason why they might move to London recently?
It's just a guess, because, it's the only thing I can think of, really.
Well, I was actually at a conference about a year ago, which had a seminar on this exact issue. And I can't remember who spoke, but the gist of what she was saying was basically people who are very wealthy across the globe, at a certain point, you can't store your wealth in bank accounts anymore because that money won't be insured. So if something happened, it would just be worthless, right? So they have to store their wealth in different forms. And one of the most effective ways of storing wealth is by purchasing property. Right. So what's kind of happening is very rich businessmen in the UK and also abroad are buying up properties. And right now, some really profitable properties are in the UK. Right. So they are purchasing up properties in the UK, and that demand is causing pricing to go up. Right. So what ends up happening is there are loads of homes in the UK which become too expensive to actually own. Right. And that's how you end up in this sort of scenario where we have more houses than homeless people.
This is just from Wikipedia, but I looked up some statistics for how many households there are in the UK, and it sort of delved into how houses are owned or rented across the UK. Turns out about 70% of them are owned, either through mortgage or actually by their occupants. 18% of all houses are social housing, and 12% are privately rented. And I assume the majority of the cases you're saying, Jacque, are going to be in the private rented stuff, but I also kind of guess that there's a lot of vacant housing.
Well, it affects it all, right? If you're driving house prices up, it also affects it if you're looking to purchase a house as well.
I must say, it was one of the few things that I thought might get better post-Brexit.
If you collapse the economy, the land value goes down.
Yeah, and you go, well, people might actually be able to afford houses. You could argue that we should move to a rental-based system instead of a house-owning system. Most people on the continent live in rented accommodation, and it seems to work and be far more stable. We panic about the fact we can't afford houses. Why do you need to own the house you live in?
But we are getting a little off topic here. To sort of bring it back, this kind of ties into the whole point with gentrification and how that increases housing prices and makes it even more difficult. And I think what Jacque brought up with large business owners buying and investing into property, depending on where you do it as well, if you start building up rural areas, you're going to increase prices there and potentially drive people into homelessness.
Yeah, gentrification is definitely an issue.
Jacque and Holmes, you guys are both in London. Have you seen like any effects of what we've just spoken about?
Yes. There's a reason I don't live in the house I used to anymore. Because the other side of Tooting, well, it's gentrification. It's exactly what we've been talking about. It's creeping from Balham in my direction, and it's also creeping from Wimbledon in my direction as well. And so I've just moved further away from the Balham side of the sweeping tide of gentrification, though I know the Wimbledon side will eventually reach me. But then I'll just move to Streatham.
Well, doesn't that just force you further and further away from where you work?
No, it doesn't actually. It just forces me further away from public transport.
In 5 years' time, that situation might get worse, right? You might be pushed out further and further.
Oh, hopefully Holmes is not a student in 5 years' time.
No, but he probably still will work in London. Isn't that where most of acting is?
And plus, students will still exist in 5 years' time. That is the issue, right?
Well, poor students in London used to live in Clapham. I live in Tooting, which is an entire zone away from Clapham. Clapham is zone 2, Tooting is zone 3.
So, hot take. What if we seize all of the property that isn't currently being lived in and then just let homeless people live there?
Who is we?
The government. What if the government seizes all? In a sense, it already has that.
It is possible for governments to seize private property, but they tend to avoid it because of what it does to their tax revenues, because businesses just go, fuck that, we're leaving. We don't want them to seize our assets.
True, true.
And I think that would have more of a negative knock-on effect than it would have a positive effect.
But just bringing it back, on the 27th of March, I read a news article that because of the coronavirus pandemic, ministers said that all rough sleepers in England were to be housed, and it was like by the weekend or something. I didn't follow it up to see if it actually had been done.
It was briefly, and then it sort of slackened off.
Yeah, that's what I expected from government. Well, let's put it this way. If they could do it for a little bit during the coronavirus pandemic, is this something that is really feasible?
The fact that they did it at all proves that it is doable. And I'll point out, it was a freaking Tory government that did it. That's insane.
Do you know where the word Tory comes from, actually? I think you might find this interesting.
Where?
It comes from the Irish Gaelic word for thief.
I fully support that definition. I refuse to accept that it's not true because they are a bunch of thieves.
Well, maybe that's a good place to end this first question. That was homelessness. You can see that we definitely stayed on topic there, and answering why are there more houses than homeless people in the UK? No idea. Next question.
Yeah.
I'm glad we resolved that issue.
Fixed it.
Problem solved. We did it, boys. Homelessness is no more.
Okay, question 2.
I think I proposed this one. What's your favourite season?
Ooh.
Well, my favourite season is season 4 of The Simpsons.
I presume, Sid, that we're talking about seasons as in the traditional spring, summer, autumn, winter.
But there's also, like, in Asia, you have different seasons than you have here. And also, it's like if you're close to the equator or in more tropical areas, you might not have seasons at all.
But yeah, Sid and I were talking about this before the podcast began, actually.
I would say my favourite season is probably autumn.
Interesting.
Maybe winter.
Yeah, my favourite season's spring.
Spring's good. They all have their charm. The problem is that Christmas has been put too far forward in winter, which means January and February are just crap because they're the worst parts of winter without any Christmas. We need to rebrand Christmas and put it a bit later. I think like February the 10th.
Do you know why February's so short? Because it was the whole calendar, the Julian calendar, that was all come up with by Julius Caesar and a Greek philosopher. You know, he hadn't even actually finished the Roman Civil War. He'd done most of it, but there was some stuff going on in Spain that he's like, well, I'll get to that after I've done the calendar. Because the Roman calendar used to be a lunar system that they had to manually adjust every few years, and it was the job of the chief priest, the Pontifex Maximus. But when he was in Egypt, he'd discovered they had a solar calendar that was much more accurate. So he and this guy made a solar calendar for the Roman world, and that is the calendar we still use now. And the reason that February is so short is because February as a month was considered unlucky.
You see, I find it surprising that we've somehow managed to get more off topic in the seasons question than I don't know much about seasons. I didn't have them for most of my life, so...
Ah, equatorial regions.
30 degrees every day, it rains whenever it wants to, perfect weather.
It's interesting, actually, the influence on language that seasons have had. I mean, in Malay, there are words for today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the day after the day after tomorrow, but they imported the words for days of the week and months from other cultures, from Arabic and from Chinese. And you question the reason for that, and then you think, actually, it's because of forward planning. Because you don't have to have a great deal of forward planning if you live in a region where you can pick fruit off the trees or hunt fish from the seas any day of the year. Whereas if you have winter and you have an agricultural society, you go, well, we're not going to be growing any food for a quarter of the year. We should probably come up with language that expresses this so we can plan ahead and deal with this problem.
That's quite interesting, Holmes. What other effects do you think, like, having seasons or not has?
I think it's largely cultural, because a lot of our, in particularly European temperate climes, a lot of the holidays and the festivals are associated with various seasonal shifts, like the summer solstice and the winter solstice. And that comes from animistic and pagan and druidic traditions, and they've just been tacked on by later religions like Saturnalia and then Christmas, Easter as well, and things like that.
What about you, Daniel?
My favourite season would probably be winter, because number one, you got Christmas. Can't beat that. Best holiday. I agree with Sammy's point that it peaks too early in the winter and then it kind of drags on. Two, you can wear lots of big coats and stuff without getting warm, and everyone knows that those look the best.
True.
They do, that's true.
You got snow, the best weather. This is coming from someone who lives in the UK. So people who, I don't know, live in like Canada or something who are used to this are like, snow's so boring. But it's still a novelty to me. Also, you got long nights for observing, you know. As an astronomer, it's a lot darker and longer nights. Because I mean, technically in the UK, in summer, it doesn't get dark enough to be properly night.
Yeah, it's never astronomical twilight, right?
Yeah, it's always astronomical twilight. In the summer.
Oh, sorry, it's always astronomical twilight. It's never astronomical.
It never goes to night in the summer, yeah.
Is that measured in lumens or what? How do you determine what is astronomical night as opposed to astronomical twilight?
No, I think it's to do with isn't it the position of the sun relative to the horizon?
Yes, to do with the brightness of the sky as well.
Yeah.
Well, they are directly correlated, though.
No, I doubt it. Jack, are you doing a PhD? I didn't think so. Sit down.
I'm sorry. I'm just talking from complete ignorance here.
Why else is winter cool?
Cool. Huh, nice.
It's cold.
Well, the
Ice
temperature,
buns.
yeah.
It's cool in a literal sense. And also, winter is probably my favourite of Vivaldi's four seasons as well.
It is the best.
I do like summer as well.
That's the second
Yeah,
best.
it's the presto in summer. I know everyone likes it, but I do like it a lot.
It's the show-off violin piece that isn't actually that hard. Or there are like much harder pieces.
Yeah, but there's always a harder piece.
There are different pieces of Vivaldi that are harder.
Well, Sid, what about you? What's your favourite season?
Autumn.
Why?
Because it's near enough to winter where you get the nice, cooler weather, which means you can wear cardigans or sweaters.
I have to say, I'm surprised you call it autumn.
Oh, instead of fall.
So I like autumn, also because of leaf colours, and especially now because I moved here in August, I've got a nice view out onto sort of hills that are near Heidelberg, and they all like turn colours, and yeah, it's just nice.
So you just like watching the trees die.
Yeah, but autumn has the inferior holiday of Halloween.
Yeah.
I like spring because, you know, new animals are being born, flowers are coming into bloom, things aren't dying.
I don't hate the other season, I just like autumn more than the others.
Alright, so Sid, you hate everything other than autumn. Jack, what do you hate?
I much rather prefer summer over winter, and the reason why is just purely the length of days, right? I really hate going into work when it's cold and dark, and then leaving work when it's cold and dark.
Oh, here's something I've just thought of. Since we've all been in lockdown, has your perception of the different seasons changed? Like, do you like the summery seasons more than the wintry ones? Just because now we've been inside.
Well, I'm very, very fortunate in that I have a garden, so I've been able to take advantage of the nice weather. Admittedly, it is the most disgusting garden you've ever seen, but that's because I live in South London. But it is still an outdoor space that I can go in without having to worry too much about social distancing and things like that, because, you know, nobody else is in my garden, and if they are, I'm going, why the fuck are you in my garden? But it just is a nice thing to have access to. I think I would have a different attitude to it if I lived in somewhere where I didn't have access to an outside space. like a friend of mine who's a stage manager on my last show, who I was talking to the other day, lives in a flat. She's not enjoying it because it's creating a very stifling atmosphere because she lives on one of the higher flats in her building.
I only live on the first floor in my flat, but even I've found just going outside for shopping and stuff just a lot nicer when, it's been sunnier and just things you have taken for granted.
Yeah, no. I'm back in home in Jersey, so I also have a garden. That's one of the main reasons I didn't want to stay in Edinburgh, because I'd just be in my student flat with like no outdoor space at all, and it's right in the middle of Edinburgh, so there's no nearby outdoor spaces I could go to.
In exactly the same position as you.
Yeah, so I think I'd go a bit stir crazy if I was locked up in there for several months.
Definitely, like my place in London, it's basically like one room. There is no living room. There's not even really like a kitchen table. London sucks. I mean, London's great. Yeah, I feel like if I was stuck there, that'd be not fun.
I have the fortunate position in where I live in London, in that I live further out than where Jacque lives, so I live in Zone 3, on south of the river as well, which makes a big difference compared to being north of the river. And it's also shared accommodation, so we do have the advantage of the garden and the kitchen space and things like that, which makes a huge difference in this kind of situation. If I was stuck in one room, I'd be going mad.
At the end, we want to announce the questions that we'll discuss for next week.
Is death a bad thing? And do we really need windows?
On a more serious note, the ones I've generated are the ones I've pulled from the list we submitted. Your favorite easy meal, and does coronavirus spell the death of the cinema?
Interesting. Tune in next week to hear our hot takes on that.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find us on Anchor FM, SoundCloud, YouTube, maybe Spotify, perhaps Twitter by next week if any of us get around to that.
Future platforms may be coming in the future.
Other platforms are available.